so far from what we've heard from proponents of this policy, of putting policy in place for enhanced interrogation techniques, is that places in the world have people with information that we need to get information from. And we agree with that. We don't dispute the fact that there are people out there that we need to interrogate and get information from. It's just a matter of how we do it. My opponents also, in arguing for this case, argued a lot about whether torture is effective, whether it works. And there is, for every piece of evidence that they have that it works, there's lots of information out there that it just simply doesn't work. Several studies have shown that coercive techniques cause body and mind stresses that result in unreliable information. We don't necessarily mean it's false information, but it might be unreliable information. According to researcher Sean O'Mara, he says there's vast literature on the effects of extreme stress on motivation, mood, and memory using both animals and humans. These techniques cause severe, repeated, prolonged stress, which compromises brain tissue supporting memory and executive function. He goes on to explain the medical part of it, which is dealing with the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex. But the bottom line is that even if terrorists are telling the truth, how do we know? If we are interrogating somebody, how would we know if they're actually telling you the truth or telling you a falsity? And this goes to the point that my opponents brought up about that it's a more effective and quicker way to gain information. Well, if Khalid Sheikh Mohammed tells you that there's a ticking time bomb down at the center of some courtyard or something, you still have to take the time to verify that. And studies have shown that when they've done studies with police officers and other interrogators, when they're trying to figure out whether they can tell if somebody's telling the truth or not, they found that only 50%, according to Daryl Rajali, who wrote a book called 5 Myths About Torture and Truth, that for about 40 years, psychologists have been testing police officers, and only about 50%, or even just maybe a little better than 50%, maybe a flip of the coin, officers were able to accurately tell if somebody was telling the truth or not. Philip B. Heyman testified in front of the Judiciary Committee in 2008, and he said, coercion is likely to elicit a statement, but frequently one that is false, and any accurate information that is furnished can therefore only be detected by time-consuming verification of the information. The problem is most severe when dealing with carefully planned operations. Like my opponent said, these terrorists, or these suspected terrorists, are not only trained on traditional interrogation techniques, but they're also trained in many of the techniques that they're advocating, like waterboarding and sleep deprivation. Or they would be given a cover story. If you are waterboarded, tell them this. How would they know if it's true or not? How will we find out if high-value targets are actually high-value targets? Even professional investigators have difficulty assessing which targets are high value or not. Again, Heyman, talking in front of the Judiciary Committee, said that the majority of jihadists detained in post-9/11 were clueless when it came to al-Qaeda's operational plans. And I don't believe many of the detainees posed a direct threat to the U.S. or were confident of bin Laden or anybody else involved in 9/11 attacks. A heavy-handed approach with these detainees was unlikely to generate any useful intelligence. Now, there have been a couple of instances, as my opponents have pointed out, where they did get information from, like Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, but the FBI also indicated that they had received much of the information that they're talking about before the waterboarding happened. Abu Zubaydah also told us about Jose Padilla, the so-called dirty bomber, but under the traditional investigation or interrogation methods, he provided with the important actionable intelligence. And that's from a former FBI agent that actually interrogated these individuals. So in sum, our opponents have addressed basically whether waterboarding works or whether torture works to gain information, but we've heard no evidence or any addressing of the fact that even if we get information from these terrorists, we can't use it in court. And unless we're going to kill the terrorists after we get the information, we've got to try and convict them. And if we don't have that, we can't use that evidence, we cannot try and convict them.